Hey, everybody, welcome to Mondays with Mike. I'm Mike, and it's Monday, and we actually have a lot to talk about, including this tremendous, awful heat wave that's going to be gripping Texas over the next week, at least. We have a little bit to talk about in the tropics, and then, sort of a look ahead. And also, just wanted to tell you where I was last week. And finally, though, I want to start with Jose Grignon. Jose, you probably heard or saw or watched, retired at the end of last week. So Friday was his last day, although I'll tell you the secret, he's still here. He's over, he still has a few days to tie up some loose ends and, get his keepsakes and all of that stuff, but he's dressed in a Fox 26 polo shirt, and he's very casual. And I thought, gosh, I haven't seen Jose casual like that in a long time, because I always just see him in a dressed to the nines. So anyway, he's here, he's doing great, everything's fine. It was the end of an era, obviously, and we don't know yet what's going to happen next with the scheduling, but you're going to be seeing a lot of Sally and a lot of Lena and a lot of Melissa, and of course we're going to mix in Denise and Chelsea, and who knows who else might squeeze in there. So just congratulations to Jose. He got a really nice I was kind of asking him, this must be getting overwhelming, right? Because I mean, this is like, it was a long goodbye. It's like a month of compliments and people remembering times, and that's kind of hard to go through for a month. I my very first show that I did here at Fox 26 was with Jose. That was almost 23 years ago. And, it's been fun. It's been really fun, but I'm not sappy emotional like that. So anyway, I'll tell you, when I leave, it's just going to be like, you're going to wonder, what happened to Mike? What happened to him? All right. Well, let me talk to you about, first of all, where I was last week. I didn't do a Mondays with Mike last week because I was in Florida, where we're visiting family in Florida, or as we call it, Florida. And I had a great time. I got to spend a lot of time with my brother and my mom and my Ryan, my best old friend. And yeah, it was great. A lot of lizards down there. So let's get to it. So we're going to talk about the heat wave, what's causing the heat wave, a couple of technical terms, and we're going to start out with what is called the omega block. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you, and we will check out a look at the omega block. So here we are. What is an omega block? What in the world are you talking about? Well, here's the United States, right? Whoops, I got to dismiss that. Hold on. That's a meeting. No, we don't want to do that. So here's a map of the United States. So I'm going to put I don't want that. I'm going to put a blue H right here. That H represents high pressure, the heat dome, if you will. And then the jet stream follows this pattern. Okay, it goes down on the left and then up in the middle and then down on the right. And this resembles the Greek letter omega. So if you are not whoa, I didn't know it was going to do that. If you don't remember the Greek letter omega, let's look that up. Greek letter omega. So this is what it looks like, right? That's the Greek letter omega. So it goes reep, reep, reep. Okay, does one of those. So remember what this looks like, and then we'll look over here, and you're going to say, Mike, that doesn't look like that at all, but it kind of does. So again, it does one of these, and then goes up in the middle, and then goes down like that, kind of like a Greek omega. And then in the middle, you have an H. So that's called an omega block. Why is it called a block? Well, a blocking pattern just means like it's stuck. You could also refer to it, if you want to get really fancy, you can call it a standing wave. But really what happens is that this high, the middle of the omega block, will stay there. and not move. It might be 5 days, it might be 7 days. I mean, sometimes these things set up for weeks, but in this case, it looks like it's going to be at least a week. So what we can do here is, this is the GFS computer model, and I'm showing you a map of obviously the United States, but the jet stream. So where you see those, the yellow and orange colors, that's where the jet stream is. Those are the fastest wind speeds. And so we can zip through this. So this is starting from today. It'll take us through the next 2 weeks. So we're going to zip through this, and now we're on Wednesday. Okay, and now we're on Friday. And okay, so the block starts to break down right here at about Friday. So you have this big high over Texas. That means it's spinning clockwise, this high. And we could zip ahead and say, whoa, there's a pattern change coming up there on Friday, Saturday. That may give us a chance of rain. And then we could look in the longer term, and we actually see a few dips in the jet stream coming through. So we call those troughs. So there might be one coming through around Thursday, you know, heading after the 4th of July. And then there may be another big ridge of high pressure setting up. So that's one thing that we could look at. There also is, well, there are lots of different things like this. You can kind of look at this. This is called a height anomaly. So this means we look at this atmospheric level, and is it abnormally high pressure or abnormally low pressure? So again, as we look at this, you see that omega block setting up, down, up, down, where it stays cool in the West Coast and cool on the East Coast. And in the middle, we stay hot. So that's pretty much established there through Friday, shifts over to the east a little bit, and then it totally breaks down here. See, at the beginning, you have that big orange over Texas, and then it breaks down completely right here coming up by the weekend. So on my 7-day, you know, I've got to take that into account, where it's not necessarily going to be cool, but we'll have a better chance for rain and you know, a bit more cloud cover, and the temperature may settle down a little bit. So this is a week from now, basically. And then as we look ahead in time, we're going to see most likely that high reassert itself during the early to mid part of July, maybe the middle of July. So it may get a little bit interesting with a little bit of a break and a chance for some showers from around the 4th of July through, you know, a couple days after that. But then in the long term, it really looks like it's very likely to set back up. As far as the effect that it has on us, we could look at what you want to see in predicting the weather is things like how much moisture there is in the atmosphere, how the winds are blowing when you go up in the atmosphere, if the air, how fast the air gets colder when you go up in the atmosphere. We call that a lapse rate. And so I can take a sample here. This is what we call the HRRR model. And I could take a sample of approximately what the atmosphere is going to look like here at like 1 p.m. So I could put my crosshairs on here and click on this, and it's going to pull up this, what's called a model sounding. And what we see on this graph, this chart, diagram actually is what it is the red is temperature, the green is dew point. Dew point is a measure of moisture. And then that dashed purple line here is what would happen if you took a little box of air called a parcel and you lifted it up in the atmosphere. And so areas here where it is, let's see, let me get a circle here. This part right here that I have circled in the blue, that's an area where that dotted purple line is to the left of the red line. Okay, who cares? Well, because that means that the piece of air that you pick up from the ground is going to end up being colder than its surroundings. And what do we know about hot things? Hot things rise, you know, like boiling water. The hot air rises and the cold air sinks. So what this shows us here is that when the air gets up to that level, it's going to sink. So because of that, thunderstorms are not expected today because the air is too dry, and also the air is too warm. So this is a an example of what is called an inversion. But I have circled right there. Sometimes you'll hear us talk about an inversion, or you'll probably hear the weather person talk about a cap, right? You'll say, oh, the atmosphere has a cap today, and stuff like that. And that's what we're talking about. We say cap is what I have circled here in the blue. The air is sinking. And so the green dew point, the air dries out. So that green gets lower and the air heats up. So as the air sinks, those two, the green and the red lines, will get farther and farther apart. And when that happens, it dries the atmosphere. It gives you hot weather, and you just don't get any thunderstorm activity. So that's sort of a demonstration, really geeky demonstration, I suppose, of what it looks like when we're trying to get an idea of, you know, whether or not it's going to rain. Now, you can also sort of fast forward in time here and say, well, is that going to change? Well, let's see. I could look. There's a longer term model here that I can zip all the way to the end, and we'll see what is this showing us on Wednesday afternoon. It's probably going to be more of the same, actually. Yeah, I mean, this is, in fact, the bottom here looks like an upside down V. That's called an inverted V sounding. Now, it's not going to storm, but if there was a thunderstorm, or if there were to be a thunderstorm, that little inverted V at the bottom, that's allows downbursts to happen. So let's see. Let me look at a different model here and just take you out to this weekend, and we'll see how things are going to be different. Because you'll see that that sounding that I showed you is not the same. Here we go. Here's the European model, and we will go out to Saturday and see if the Euro is showing anything different on Saturday. No, the Euro isn't. That's interesting. See, the GFS model is showing rain this weekend, and the Euro really isn't. What do you do when models disagree like this? You know, it's not easy. You have to just kind of go with which one's been consistent. It's interesting, the GFS model here, sorry, I'm boring you with this. The GFS model has been consistently too hot with our temperatures, actually, for at least the last week or week and a half. It's been too hot. It's been biased to the hot side. And why is that? I'm not 100% sure. I think it's underestimating, for some reason, the influence of how much humidity we've had. Dry air will almost always get hotter than moist air. So when we're super humid, we're only going to make it into the upper 90s. If we start to dry out, then we could get well above 100. So that's one of the reasons why, if you've ever heard of like camping in the desert or something like that, or maybe being lost in the desert, it gets cold at night. And then it gets super hot during the day because that dry air cools off quickly and warms really quickly. Whereas if you're near the coastline, let's say you're on Galveston Island, it only gets to 80 in the morning and 90 in the afternoon. It only changes by 10 degrees. Desert might change by 50 degrees. So it's interesting. All right, what about the tropics? Well, let me show you this. Because obviously it was active. Well, if you remember, it was active last week when we had two tropical systems at the same time. We had Tropical Storm Brett and we had Tropical Storm Cindy. Two at the same time in June is very rare. It happens all the time in August, September, but it's really rare in June. So it was the first time since 1968 that we had two tropical systems at the same time in the month of June. And one of them was Cindy, and this yellow X that you see there is the remnants of Cindy, where the remnants of Cindy are, because it encountered a lot of shear and kind of got ripped apart. But that one has about a 30% chance of redeveloping. Now, this is a very bright map that I'm going to show you, and this is dust. Okay, you know how we talk about the Saharan dust? Well, here you go. And this is a map that comes to us from NASA. And this is the SAL. Whoops. I don't want to see the news. Come on, go away. Go away. Oh, come on. See, this is MSN trying to mess me up. I'm trying to work here. Thank you, MSN. What you're looking at here is a map put together by NASA, and the bright red areas on the right-hand side of your screen are areas where there is dust present. And it's the SAL. It's called the Saharan air layer. And the dust blows off the coastline. And almost always where you have this bright red or bright yellow or bright orange, where we have the high amounts of dust, it shuts down tropical activity. And that's the case right now. So we went through a whole period of time here in the Caribbean Sea and in parts of the Atlantic where we had very little dust. And in fact, you could see where Tropical Storm Cindy was, which is right here in this area that I just circled, not much dust, right? Not much dust there. And then the rest of the ocean, there's a lot of dust. And so it may turn out that we're in a little bit of a break here as far as tropical development for a while. Even though we did have a big flurry, these things tend to come in waves. And so we had that odd, very short-lived system at the beginning of the season. That was Tropical Storm Arlene. You might have even forgotten about it because it was so insignificant. It was over to the west of Tampa, Florida, and it flared up for like half a day, and then it was it. And it fizzled as it moved toward Key West. And then we had Brett and Cindy, and now it looks like we're going into sort of dust city. So we've got dust, we've got shear, and things are going to become less favorable for any tropical development. All right, back to the heat. I want to show you this. Our morning anchor, Lena DeFlorius, it's funny, like every once in a while, someone will become interested in a subject. It could be an anchor, it could be a reporter, it could be a weather person. And if you sort of dedicate yourself to learning a lot about that specific subject, then you can become the person at that station where people will turn to if they're working on a story and say like, hey, does this make sense? Or, can you give me some feedback on this? Lena has done that for things like the Texas ERCOT grid, which of course, most people never heard of ERCOT, which is Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Most people have never heard of ERCOT till the big freeze in February of 2021. When we, almost lost the entire grid. Well, this is a page that ERCOT provides that shows you grid and market conditions. So, and this is one thing that Lena shares with us a lot on the morning news. And like I said, she's studied a lot more of the nuances of what this means. But the basics of it is that we're looking at a day like today, which is going to be very hot. In the Houston area, near 100. Out west, it's going to be like 103 or 104 in San Antonio, and then farther west out around Midland, Texas, probably 110, almost 110 in El Paso. So a lot of heat. Now that means you're also going to get a lot of solar input, a lot of solar power generation. But where these lines come together here, see right here, the farther they are apart, that means you're generating a lot of electricity and the demand is below your generation. So that means you're in good shape. Your capacity to generate electricity is above the demand. Where the lines get closer together there, that's where you start to go, oh, okay, we're getting pretty close here. We need to make sure that we have enough capacity to provide for the demand. We also, and this is what I think is really neat. So like as of the time that we're watching this, and this will change. This always changes throughout the day. In fact, I'm going to refresh this page just so we can get the very, very latest. So it actually tells you fuel mix. See this? So it'll be able to tell you what percentage at any moment we're getting from solar power, wind power, nuclear power, coal power, and natural gas power. So when we have a very sunny day, like we're having out there today across most of the state, right now we're getting roughly 19% of all the power in Texas, the electricity in Texas, provided from the sun. That's nice. Wind always helps as well, but wind is going to be iffy for the next few days. We will get a decent breeze in some areas in the afternoon, but it's not going to be really a dominant wind. Still providing 12% of our electricity as of right now. Natural gas is pulling most of the weight at almost 48%, 47%, I should say. And we also have coal plants that are producing about 14.5%, along with good old nuclear, including the South Texas nuclear project down by Bay City, 7%. So as we get really hot, that's the one good thing is you'll get a lot of solar power. And sometimes you'll get some wind power, but it's sort of just barely balanced by the fact that you're also going to have extremely high demand from people trying to keep their homes and businesses cool. So we're going to be watching this really closely for you this week, the ERCOT grid, the power demand, power supply, because we're going to be setting records. We set some records last week, but we're going to be setting some records as to the highest demand, electricity demand put on the Texas grid. Because, you know, our population has gotten a lot bigger too. So you have more population, more energy use, extreme heat, you know, you can imagine. So anyway, a lot to watch here in the world of weather. So I hope you all made it to the end. Had to rush a little bit today. I actually have a meeting I need to be in 7 minutes that I need to rush out of here. But I really appreciate your kind attention. And I will see you next week. Well, of course, I'll see you every morning. And I'll see you next week on Mondays with Mike. Take care.